What is up, guys? Rick Cactus here, and today we are going to be taking a look at a brand new exotic weapon coming to Destiny 2 with the Forsaken expansion. This is a weapon that caught a lot of people's eyes. It was originally seen in the Forsaken reveal trailer, and a lot of people compared this glowing hand cannon to the Thorn. Well, it's not the Thorn, it's something entirely different and really sweet. Now, in the background is going to be gameplay from Tangled Show Exploration. I was able to capture this at the Forsaken launch event, so big thank you to Activision for providing for my hotel and flight, so I was able to attend. And let's just dive right into this and talk all about this new exotic weapon. So, let's start with the base statistics. Now, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show you guys the inspection of this gun, but it is a 180 rounds per minute hand cannon, so it's one of the faster firing hand cannons. It has a magazine of 15, not the best range, but very high stability, not so great handling, and actually better than average reload speed. So that's kind of the base hand cannon we're dealing with. But of course, it's got some exotic perks. The first one is the exotic intrinsic perk called Explosive Shadow. Shoot tainted slugs that burrow into the enemy. Stacking enough slugs causes them all to explode. And you're going to see this in the background gameplay quite a bit. Essentially, when you go rapid fire on an enemy and you hit them enough times. Now, these hits can be precision or body, it doesn't really matter, but once you've hit an enemy a certain amount of times, then all those slugs will explode in them. And so you'll see like these damage numbers popping up, like maybe like 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, and suddenly you're gonna see like 400 pop up like 5 or 6 times. Those are the slugs detonating. So essentially, Explosive Shadow means that this hand cannon, in terms of sheer damage output, when you're fighting any sort of more than average ad, when you're fighting a yellow health ad or a shielded ad or something that you're going to want to shoot many times, this is again just going to out DPS the crap out of any similar hand cannon, because any other hand cannon is not going to increase its overall damage with the Explosive Shadow perk. So against these type of ads, it's very effective. And one of the best parts is that when these explosions are going off, it really seems to stagger those enemies in which it's affecting. So more damage on top of staggering them and preventing them from shooting back at you. This is a pretty good package. Now, continuing on from there, the Malfeasance actually has another unique perk with Taken Predator. Bonus damage against taken enemies and Gambit invaders. So, in terms of PvE, anytime you see, a weapon damage bonus to a faction, those are actually pretty useful. In the past, we actually did have raid weapons with, a very similar perk. It was bonus damage against Taken, and that bonus damage was actually around 10-ish%. So that's nothing to scoff at, especially with a weapon that already has great DPS capabilities. So when you're fighting Taken, it's going to be even more apparent that this is a hand cannon that's just miles ahead of your normal hand cannons. But also against Gambit invaders, that's actually pretty crazy. It's something you don't necessarily expect to see on a weapon, but hey, maybe it's worth running this in Gambit, just because if that is a substantial damage bonus, I wonder what the values are in between the versus taken enemies and versus Gambit invaders. But regardless, if it does substantial bonus damage, this could definitely be something worth running. So that's what the Malfeasance exotic hand cannon does, but how was it? Overall, how was this as a new exotic weapon? Well, I did definitely enjoy my time with it. The effect was cool, it was noticeable, I like seeing bonus damage numbers. The Taken Predator, unfortunately, with my time using it, didn't really come up. Obviously, in exploration of Tangled Shore, aren't really a bunch of Taken running around, but it's definitely a useful perk overall. I would love to see the damage values on it. I think that this is a pretty solid PvE hand cannon. And the reason I say that is because in terms of PvP, the way the intrinsic exotic perk works is that you actually have to shoot an enemy quite a lot of times, and I feel like in PvP, you've already killed that enemy long before you're going to be triggering these secondary explosions. So it really feels like a weapon you want to be using against, more powerful enemies in PvE, and it's going to be performing much better in those PvE scenarios. With that being said, there is this scenario where you could potentially shoot an enemy a few times with the Malfeasance and then have them run away and re-engage, and even though they've healed themselves, they still have those slugs in them. Could you keep shooting them and then it's going to trigger the amount of shots you've hit into them overall and then cause the explosions? That could be very useful in those particular circumstances. But it still does feel like more of a PvE weapon. Now, there is kind of a catch with that, because the Malfeasance would be a really, really good gun in the old weapon system. When you just relied on primary weapons to take down the more powerful adds, a primary weapon that's doing better things than normal is really, really good. However, with this new weapon system and the fact that you can have a shotgun or a sniper or a fusion rifle to take down those powerful enemies way more efficiently. Like, although this is good, I mean, why wouldn't you just switch to your escalation shotgun or perfect paradox or something like that? You know what I mean? So, in this new weapon system, you don't necessarily need to rely on a primary to take down, the more powerful PvE enemies. And this is a primary that finds itself at home taking down those more powerful PvE enemies. So it kind of is lost somewhat in the new weapon system in that regard. With all of that being said, you probably just want a primary that can handle its own against a little bit more powerful enemies. That's certainly nothing but an upside, but it does mean that you're going to have to just like this weapon, as a whole package, not necessarily putting this weapon on to accomplish a single objective. And I think some people really will like the overall package, just as a hand cannon itself. The stability is nuts, it's nearly maxed out, and it is so easy to land consecutive headshots. Like, that's one of the best parts of this weapon. So I do see people definitely trying this out. I'm not sure if it's worth giving up your exotic slot. There's a lot of very powerful things that take that slot up. The Whisper and stuff come to mind, but definitely a sweet new addition to the game. Now, before we end the video, I realized while editing that I show some background gameplay of myself participating in the brand new public event coming in the Tangled Show. And don't worry, you guys don't have to rewind and try to figure out what I was doing there. I'm going to explain how to activate Heroic on this brand new public event because we were able to figure it out. And this is going to be incredibly useful, of course. Few things are worse in Destiny 2 than having someone fail a heroic public event activation. So, when this particular Cryo Pod Public Event starts, there's just going to be a bunch of enemies spawning in from ships and so on. Kill these enemies for a certain time period, and then the cell, the cryopod itself, will actually open up and a boss will pop out. Now, the thing you don't want to do is actually kill the boss. You want to leave him alive because after a period of time of somewhat damaging the boss, but also just killing enemies that again continue to spawn, the ground is going to become affected by cryo energy. So a whole area around the cryopod will be kind of glowing blue and crackling with somewhat electricity, somewhat ice. It's kind of a weird effect, but when you're in this area, when you're on the ground, you will take damage. So while this is happening, if you look at the cryopod itself, you'll see that some small circular objects near the bottom of it are steaming. There's steam shooting out. Now, if you shoot those circular objects, you'll actually be able to do damage to the steaming ones, do enough damage, and they'll break open and provide a cryo orb. You pick up this cryo orb and throw it at the boss himself. Now you have to shoot multiple of these steaming holes to get the cryo orbs, and once you hit the boss, I believe 3 times with these cryo orbs, he then becomes frozen solid, and there's a white objective marker around that frozen solid boss. You stand in there for the allotted time period, like it'll go from 0 to 100%. Once you get to 100% by simply standing in there and defending him from arriving adds, you will have achieved the heroic for the Cryopod Public Event on the Tangled Show. Guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed and found this informative. Now, if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. And if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.